So iPhone season appears to be in full swing here on the channel because I'm back with a third video for the month, this time unpacking what's on my iPhone 13 Pro. Now, as most of you would be aware, I am primarily an Android user, but for the past month or so, I've been using the iPhone 13 Pro as my main everyday device, and so it has been a bit of a challenge in making that switch from Android to iOS because a lot of the apps I use every single day on Android are just simply not available on iOS. And so with that being said, I thought it'd be fun to showcase the apps I've been using on my iPhone 13 Pro that have made the switch as seamless as possible, whilst also making sure that when I switch back to Android, I haven't dug myself a bit of a hole. So grab a drink, sit back, and let's take a look at what is on my iPhone 13 Pro. Okay, so before we get to the apps, let's just quickly chat about the home screen setup itself. It is a one-page setup, and it consists of 3 different sections, if you will. I covered how to replicate this exact setup in detail in my recent iOS 15 home screen setup tutorial video, so I'll leave that linked up in the cards and down in the description below. But in short, up the top we have a blank widget that's been created using the Clear Spaces application, and then below that we have 8 application icons, each of which are using icons from my brand new pastel icon pack, which you can pick up over on my website, again, also linked below. And then finally, below those icons is a clean weather widget that I created using the Widgie application, and you can download the backup file for this widget for free, also via my website. This bottom widget is actually a stack, so when I swipe it, it reveals a reminders widget and some quick shortcuts I've set up. And I've got to say, this widget stack functionality is really nice. But what is new about this home screen setup is the wallpaper. Instead of the mountain sky wallpapers I used in that previous iOS 15 setup video, the wallpaper you can see here is from a brand new wallpaper pack I've been working on called Slide. So similar to this wallpaper here, which is called Wave, the Slide wallpaper pack is filled with abstract-based backdrops, but what makes them unique is that similar to the mountain sky backdrops I showcased in that iOS 15 home screen setup video, every single wallpaper in the Slide wallpaper pack gives the illusion of the dock being completely invisible as long as you have the dark theme activated. And this is a look I've kind of gotten addicted to. Once again, these are available for purchase over on my website, and on top of the 10 unique wallpapers that have been designed for mobile devices, I've also included a landscape variation of each to suit a PC device, which is what you can see I'm using here. So 20 files in total, pretty cool designs if I do say so myself, but hopefully you'll love the look of them as well. But that's how I've managed to pull off a pretty clean home screen setup with no dock visible, negative space above my icons, and a pretty clean icon pack to go with. Again, all of the relevant links are down in the description below, but with that out of the way, let's now chat about the apps I have installed. So on the home screen, we have Twitter, Google Maps, the YouTube Studio application, WhatsApp, Gmail, Messages, the camera app, and finally, Google Chrome. From there, we'll swipe over to the app library, and I still don't love how Apple has implemented this app library system. I wish we could have full control over how the apps are organized here, but regardless, there are a few apps I want to make mention of in this app library. We'll skip over suggestions, recently added, and the social folder because they're all really boring. But if we jump into the productivity and finance folder, the first app that I want to mention is Bring. And this is a shopping list application that I also use over on Android as well. And my wife and I use this all the time to create our weekly shopping lists. And it updates in real time. So if I'm ever at the shops, the wife wants me to buy something extra, she can add it into Bring and I should see it. Definitely super handy that it's available on both iOS and Android. Next up, you can see I download pretty much all of the basic Google applications because I also use these over on Android. And so this includes Google Drive and Gmail, which is also on my home screen. But then there's also the Google Calendar app. And as you can see, I've switched off my events just for the filming of this video. But we do use Google Calendar fairly regularly in our household to keep a track of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Now for note taking, I was super pleased to discover that Notes Nook was also available on iOS. This is a fairly new note taking application that I started using on Android as of a few months ago, so the fact that it's also available on iOS is fantastic. This is a great note taking app with a beautiful design, and it has online sync support as well. So whenever I make a change on my iPhone 13 Pro, my notes will also be updated on my Android phones and of course on the browser version as well, which is seriously amazing. As for reminders, over on Android, I use an amazing application called Memoreji, which I've raved about many times on the channel in the past, but unfortunately, there is no iOS version available at this time. So I did have to spend a good 20 minutes or so copying one by one each of my recurring reminders from Memoreji into the reminders application, which was a little bit annoying. And it also means I'll have to repeat that same process when I switch back to Android. But hey, at least the reminders application works really well. All right, nothing else too interesting in this folder. So from there, I'll jump into the utilities folder. And one thing to mention here is that I've actually replaced the stock Apple keyboard with Google's Gboard, simply because it enables haptic feedback when typing, which if you haven't yet experienced that on an iPhone device, just promise me you'll download it and give it a go, because with the incredible iPhone haptics, it makes for such a beautiful typing experience. Beyond that, the only other app in this folder worth mentioning is the OLED X app, which when opened does really well at emulating an always on display. I've become so accustomed to having this feature on my Android phones that not having it here with the iPhone 13 Pro has been very close to a deal breaker, and it kind of baffles me that Apple have not implemented this natively yet. I even have a shortcut on my home screen within this widget stack I mentioned to launch the OLED X application, but as I said in my full review of the iPhone 13 Pro, I often forget to trigger this, which is why I'd much prefer it if Apple baked this feature in natively. Okay, from there we have the creativity folder, and aside from some stock apps and the Google Photos app, I also have an application installed called Preview, and this helps me to set up and, as the name indicates, preview my Instagram feed. And I literally use this anytime I'm about to post to Instagram, which is pretty often, so if you're not yet following me there, then you definitely should. And then finally in this folder is the YouTube Studio application, which is perhaps one of the most used apps on this iPhone 13 Pro, hence why it has a place on my home screen as well. All right, over to the graphics and design folder. Some of these apps were downloaded in the process of prepping my iOS 15 home screen setup tutorial video, but the 4 apps I use most in this folder are the Backdrops application, the Transparent Icons application, Unfold, and Widgie. So Backdrops is a fantastic app for sourcing abstract wallpapers. Transparent Icons is what I use to remove those rounded rectangles behind each of the icons on my home screen. Widgie, as mentioned, is what I've used to set up that weather widget on my home screen. And finally, Unfold is what I use to create these super clean Instagram stories that contain the various promo codes that I release each month. This is an app I use all the time on Android as well, and a lot of people have been asking about that one, so there you go. All right, into the entertainment folder, and the only apps I use in here are IMDb, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Taking a quick look at the information and reading folder, and here I've just started using Apollo to browse Reddit. Pocket Casts is my podcasting app of choice because it works on both iOS and Android, meaning when I switch between the two, I don't lose where I'm up to if I'm halfway through listening to a podcast. And finally, I have the Carrot Weather app installed, which I don't use all too often, but it is a pretty great third-party weather application with a really clean design, so it's definitely worth checking out if you're looking for something a little more than the stock Apple weather application. And so finally, we enter into the dreaded other folder. And here I use the EcoVax application for activating the robot vacuum that lives in my office, Google Maps as my preferred navigation app of choice. And then finally, I use the LifeX app because I've got a few LifeX bulbs in and around the house. And all of these apps have Android versions available as well, which is really nice. And aside from that, that's really all there is to my iPhone 13 Pro. So there you go, a pretty clean, visually appealing home screen setup, along with a suite of applications that make switching back and forth with Android devices as seamless as can be. As always, links to everything mentioned throughout the video, including my pastel icon pack and my brand new wallpaper pack slide, have been included down in the description below. But that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.